Hi everybody, and welcome to this week's episode of Turning Readers into Writers. And I'm really excited about this week because it's a big week for me. It's a really big week. This episode is going out on, oh my goodness, it's going out on the 1st of March. And that is the week that my first non-fiction book, Launchpad, the countdown to writing your novel, is released. Oh my goodness, it's so amazing. I'm so excited. I've been wanting to write a non-fiction book for a while because I really want to reach more writers, particularly first-time writers, because that's who I work with. That's who I really want to help, because I know the power of finishing your first novel. I know what writing that first manuscript can do for you. It can be the catalyst for so much change in your life. Honest to goodness, I wouldn't be here doing what I'm doing if I hadn't written that first very bad, I don't mind admitting, manuscript, that very first draft. But it was the first time I'd finished anything long form, and even though it was messy, even though there was so many holes in it, I'd finished it. You know, I had a beginning, a middle and an end, and I was absolutely delighted. And from that point on, things started to change for me. I went ahead and learned how to revise a book as well. And then I went on to learn about the difference between indie publishing and traditional publishing, and finding out what was the right route for me, because it wasn't an easy decision to start with. I didn't know, there's so many options. I didn't know which option would be the best one for me. But it really set in motion. That very first draft of my first book set in motion a whole chain of events that have led me to here. Have led me to this moment where I've published my first non-fiction book, and means I'm able to help more first-time writers like you achieve that dream that they've always wanted. Now, what is so magical about this is that I've not done it alone. So yes, I am the lead author on this, in that myself and Grace Salmon, we have pulled together the best of the best of the best of the people that we know to come together and put this book together. So it's an anthology of all the things that you need to know to write your book. And what a great way to start. You know, when we think about writing our novels, we do it alone, don't we? We can collaborate with other people, but when it comes to the actual writing, most of us do that little bit on our own. So to be able to work with so many other amazing writers and friends was a wonderful way to begin my non-fiction journey. Community is everything. We hear that a lot, and it really has proven itself to be the case for this book. So this felt like the perfect opportunity to let you know more about it. Now, if you do want to go ahead and have a look at the website for this book, you can do that at launchpadcountdown.com. And there you will find details about this book. Now, this book, Launchpad, the Countdown to Writing Your Book, it is the first in a trilogy. So the second book, which will be due out later this year, or is due out later this year, is Launchpad, the Countdown to Publishing Your Book. And then the final book in the trilogy is Launchpad, the Countdown to Marketing Your Book, which is, very exciting. So it's everything that you need to either start your career, to get your book written, to find the right publishing path for you, and then to let people know about your book through marketing efforts. So either to start your career, or perhaps you've stalled a bit. Life has taken over sometimes, and it means that we've taken a detour, but now you're back and you're ready to jumpstart your career again. Then these 3 books are exactly what you need to get your motivation going, to get your juices flowing again, and get that excitement back into your blood for writing, publishing and marketing your book. So go to launchpadcountdown.com and you'll find out all about them. But I wanted to share with you, my take on it, and my reasons for working with the writers that I'm working with on this, and why we've chosen the topics we've chosen. Because writing this book, pulling this book together, it was a real opportunity for me to go back to the beginning, to go back to when I wrote that first manuscript and thinking about what do I wish I had known when I was doing that manuscript, when I was writing that manuscript, that would have helped me get to where I wanted to be that bit quicker, that bit faster, that bit easier. And so it was great to have an opportunity to sort of relive those early days, if you like. And so we thought it would be a wonderful opportunity to start at the beginning and look at the tools of the trade, and particularly research tools. This is a big area for a lot of people, and this is not just for those who are writing an historical novel or maybe a police procedural where you've got to have you've got to be up to speed with all the latest police procedures, but actually it can be about anything. So I know a writer who writes women's fiction, and she's written a story that is based around somebody with a brain disease, and the research that she had to do into that was immense. Lots of medical research, as well as looking at people who do live with this condition and what it's like for them and their families. So it was really important for her to find the right research. But you might be more like me and you don't need to do so much technical research, but you might want to research about a place. So if I think about my first novel, The Day She Came Home, it's set in 2 places in Scotland, one of which I know very well, but it's a long time since I've lived there. And like any city, the city of Glasgow any city changes. It changes all the time. Equally, I was writing about one of the Scottish islands, and it had been quite a few years since I'd been there. So again, I wanted to do some research about that island. And that includes, perhaps a little bit of the history of it, but it also means the geography of the place. What do the streets look like? Just reminding myself of the shops that are there, the restaurants that are there. And by seeing a visual of it, then I can remind myself of the smell of the place, the feel of the place, how busy or quiet it was. So research can cover all sorts of things. It can cover something as simple as topography and geography and a cityscape, all the way through to very complex medical procedures, and everything in between. So it's not just for historical, not just for technical books, but for any fiction that you are writing, there will be some research that you need to do. And the wonderful Meredith R. Stoddart has put together a fantastic chapter for us on exactly that. And it's really good because she gives you precise examples, she gives you the links that you need, she tells you how to use search terms to maximize and make your search so much more efficient. It's a brilliant chapter. Alongside that, or in conjunction with, tools, is my own chapter, because my chapter is about how to find and work with a book coach. If you haven't heard me bang on about book coaching before, this is your opportunity. And the reason I do is because it's been so life-changing for me. And if I had known about book coaches when I first started writing, it would have changed so much. My book would have been a lot better. I would have had more accountability. I would have written it faster. I cannot emphasize enough to you the benefits of working with a third party on this. Somebody who is invested in your work, who is your pseudo reader, i.e. they're standing in for your reader. They are coming to it with fresh eyes, and they're able to kind of offer the clarity that we as the author cannot always see. You know yourself that it's difficult to see the wood for the trees sometimes, and that is one of the wonderful things that a coach does. And I love my coach dearly, and not only does she help me write better books, but she's become a friend as well. And in fact, so impressed am I with her that I did actually ask her to come in and contribute a chapter to this book, which I will tell you about in a moment, because first of all I want to start with Joe Bunting's chapter about scene structure. So Joe Bunting is from The Right to Practice. You may have heard of them. He's been around for a long time. He really knows his stuff, and I love what he has to say about scene structure, because I think it is one of the foundational skills, or understandings that you need to have if you want to write a good story. There's such strong guidelines, there's such specific guidelines that if you follow them, you cannot help but write a cracking scene. A scene that has everything that you need in it. It sets, you'll set the scene up. You'll say who's there. You'll have the conflict that you need in the scene. You have the resolution that you need in the scene. You'll make sure that you've got the emotions on the page of the characters who are in that scene. You have it all wrapped up there, and you know exactly what is happening in that little bundle of scene and how it will lead you naturally onto the next scene, where again you have the setup, you have the conflict, you have the climax of the scene, you have the emotions of your character in that scene. And then the finale of that scene leads you beautifully into the third scene. Scene structure is one of those secrets I really wish I'd known at the beginning. And so I was determined to have a chapter about that in here, in this book. Which leads me beautifully on to Samantha Scal's chapter. And Samantha Scal is my coach. She specialises in thriller and suspense stories, which I write. And so she was the natural person to go to ask to write a chapter about suspense, conflict and tension. Now, you might be thinking, well, that's what you need if you're writing a thriller or a crime or a mystery story. But let me tell you, you need tension and suspense and conflict, particularly in every single scene that you write. Now, the degree to which you have those, of course, will vary. But every scene needs to have them. And if you follow the scene structure guidelines together with how to build that conflict, you've got just a bit of magic going on. And the reason that you want to have that suspense, that you want to have that little bit of conflict and upping the tension, is because that is what will keep your reader interested. Not just tension about the plot line, but tension about your characters as well. What's going on for them internally? And if there's tension there, either internal tension or tension between two characters, then you're upping the excitement, you're upping the stakes for your characters, and that's exciting for your reader, and it keeps them on this edge of their seat and keeps them wanting to turn the page. So these two chapters together are absolutely vital. And you know what? I would say, for my money anyway, they are worth the price of the book in and of themselves. But there's more. That's not where things end. We have the wonderful Linda Rosen talking to us about critique groups. Now, critique groups are, I think they are a really powerful part of your writing journey as a whole. If you've never been in one, I do recommend that you seek one out and join it and be there for a while. And you'll either discover that you get what you need from it and then you are able to move on. Or you join one and you discover, actually, you love this, not necessarily for the writing element or not solely for that, but for the camaraderie that comes from a critique group as well, for that community feel that comes with it. And Linda's been a member of a number of different critique groups, and she explains the kind of differences in them. Some have been in person, some have been online, some have been text-based. So it's a real mix out there of what you can find, and she has some wonderful guidelines and suggestions for you as to how you can find one that is right for you, but also, which is important, how you participate in a critique group, because you bring something to that group as well as them giving you something, and it's got to be reciprocal and one that everybody feels the benefit of. So a fantastic chapter there about critique groups. And if, as I say, if you haven't been a member of one, do join one and just have that experience, even if you decide it's not for you in the end, or that you move on to find a new one that is a better fit for you. All right. Heather Davis, the wonderful Heather Davis. She has a magical chapter about show and tell. Now, if you've been in my space for a little while, if you were a part of the Be a Bestseller 4 event, and if you've been listening to this podcast for a little while, you will have heard Heather talk to me before, because I think this is a magical topic. I think it's so enlightening for so many people. So you've heard the phrase "show don't tell," haven't you? You've heard this a million times before, and have probably wondered, what does it mean? I don't even know what it means. It's too confusing. How do I show and not tell my reader what's going on? Well, Heather demystifies all of this for you, and she explains why it's not show, don't tell, it's show and tell. You need a little bit of both of those things to not only draw your reader in, get them engaged with the story, but then also allow them to picture that story, to see what's going on, and then to move the story forwards, so that you're not losing momentum, that you're always there's always action going on, you're always moving that story forward, so it keeps your reader entertained. So another valuable chapter there. Carol van den Hende, she talks to us about harnessing the power of selecting the right point of view. This chapter is great because, you know, we all understand that, or if you don't, point of view is the narrator, the voice the narrator takes on as they're explaining the story. And it might be first point of view, where the pronouns used are I. Or there's also first plural, so it might be we. You might say we are going to the shops, or but if it's singular, then it's I am going to the shops. You might be using second point of view, which is you are going to the shops. You might be using third close, which is he or she, but you're telling the story from a very tight perspective, so you're only telling the story from that one person's perspective. Or you might be using third omniscient, which is much more of that kind of godlike point of view, where your narrator is sitting above everybody and can dive down into one character's head and see what they're thinking and tell the reader what's going on there, but then they zoom up and out again and then choose another character and get into their head and see what's going on. So there's different ways that you can use these points of view, and what's so wonderful about Carol's chapter is she gives fantastic examples, really good examples of how these different points of view are used to great effect, and why a writer might choose that point of view as well. There's sometimes deliberate reasons why a writer will select a specific point of view. Many of you might find actually you choose, or your point of view chooses you, and it's a more natural feel for you and you enjoy writing in that. But sometimes you'll have a story that your usual point of view doesn't quite fit. Especially if you're someone who writes across genres, you write in different genres, you might find that you have to kind of change the point of view you plump for, depending on the story. And Carol's chapter is brilliant at kind of explaining or giving suggestions as to why you might choose a given point of view in any particular story. So really great chapter there, and I think you will find that really beneficial. Now, if you know me at all, you do know that I love character. For me, story is all about character. That's at the heart of everything. Once you've got your character in place and you know them, then everything else comes after that, including scene structure and conflict. But you need to have a solid character at the heart of that, someone who is as real as you can possibly make them, who are as imperfect as you can possibly make them, but who have dreams and ambitions and want more for themselves, or want change for themselves, albeit reluctantly, but they know that changes are coming. So I asked my good friend Kat Caldwell, because she is big on this topic as well. So I asked her to come in and talk about character. And she's been on a big journey with character exploration herself over the course of 2022. And it was wonderful to have her come in and share her learnings with you about what it takes to devise and create this wonderful 3D character for your books, and different ways you can approach it, because everyone has their own idiosyncrasies when it comes to developing characters. And so she looks at some different ways, some ways certainly I had never thought about when it came to developing character, and I know that you'll get a lot from that as well. So it's another fantastic chapter. Let me look. I'm just looking at the table of contents here and seeing what I perhaps have missed out. Oh yes, Suzanne Dunlap. She's an historical novelist, and she's also a book coach, and she's written a wonderful chapter on world building and how to build an engrossing world, one that really feels part of your story and one in which your characters feel at home. So she does this really well. She takes you through the various elements of it. She explains why it's not just for sci-fi and fantasy writers, but that every book needs to create a world that is believable for your characters and the type of story that you're telling. She takes us through the basic principles of world building and how you define them, and then how you can use world building in your backstory. Really interesting take on that, and then the best tools to give yourself in order to build a really good world, fictional world for your characters. So it's a great chapter, as I say, not just for sci-fi fantasy, but for anybody, because even if you're writing about somewhere you still need to create the atmosphere, you still need to create the physical space in which your characters move and live. And Suzanne gives us a fantastic way of doing that. Oh, how could I forget? Louis Jorstad from the Novel Smithy. He's got a great chapter on outlining. Now I can hear the pantsers kind of going, oh, we don't like outlining. Outlining's not for us. But I'm going to challenge you on that and say that yes, outlining is for you. Maybe not in the way that it would be if you were a plotter. But certainly outlining is, everybody needs a degree of outlining. I'm a pantser myself, but I still know that there are some things I need to have in place if I don't want to go round in circles and I don't want to waste months and months and possibly years of my writing life. So Lewis, it's a brilliant chapter. He's so good at explaining things. He's so good at laying information out, explaining why having an outline of some description is so important to you, your novel writing, and how you can do it in a way that suits your personality. So he talks about outlining for, of course, plotters, of course, pantsers, but also for puzzlers. Are you a puzzler? So are you someone who writes in what I call a patchwork fashion, in that you write the scenes as and when they come to you, as and when they speak to you? And so how do you plan or outline if that is the way that you write? Well, luckily for you, Lewis is also a puzzler, a patchwork writer. So he knows exactly what you're going through and he has you covered in this chapter. So outlining, it's for everybody. It's for everybody. Now, I am somebody who is not naturally gifted at spelling, at punctuation, at grammar, and those kind of very detail-orientated aspects of writing. It's not something I'm good at. It's not something I have a natural affinity for or a natural talent for. So this was important to me to have this chapter. A chapter about grammar and punctuation. Now, for some of you, you'll be thinking, well, why on earth would you need that, Emma? Because surely you learnt to write properly at school. And it's true, I'm a very well-educated person, but at the same time, I still am really, really bad at grammar and punctuation, and I just miss the little mistakes that I've made, even in the rereading. Even if I'm reading something for the 10th time, there are elements I will still miss. And so it was really important for me that we have a chapter about this, and there was no better person for me to turn to than Stacey Juba. She's an author herself, so she understands the process that we go through, and she understands the main grammatical and punctuation areas that we need to know about as fiction writers. You know yourself that there are whole books dedicated just to this topic, but for us as authors, we don't need a whole book about it, but there are key things that we do need to be aware of. This key common punctuation that we use in our novels that we want to be able to use properly. So I asked Stacey, who's an editor as well, so she's a novelist and an editor, which means she comes at this from both sides. She understands the technicalities of editing and proofreading, but she also knows what writers are like, and some of us, this is not our natural zone of genius. So Stacey takes us through the 10 most common mistakes that she sees writers make. And it was reassuring for me for her to have 10 common ones that she could talk to, because it suggested that I'm not alone in this, that there are other people who also need a little bit of extra help with their grammar and their punctuation. So she uses the Chicago Manual of Style as her base, but because she's a writer and she works with authors and novelists, she's also adapted it to fit her own house style. So everything is proper and correct, but you may find that, of course, it doesn't match exactly with the Chicago Manual of Style or the Oxford Manual of Style, but it is all proper and correct and as it should be. And so if you're like me and this is an area that you do struggle with, then I totally recommend having this chapter to hand. I tell you what, since she submitted the chapter, I have used it many times in my own writing already, and the book isn't even published. So I'm really grateful for it. So what happens then? You know, we've started off learning about the tools of writing, about researching, about a coach being a part of your toolbox as well. And then we're looking at outlining and how you start putting a book together, and maybe you're working with a critique group to help you kind of outline and do the pre-work on your novel. But then we've got chapters on the craft of writing. So the show don't tell, the show and tell, point of view, building your characters, structuring a scene, making sure you've got the tension and the conflict that you need to make your chapters interesting. So you go through all of this and you've written your book. So what do you do now? You're feeling good. You're not quite ready to publish, but you're almost there. Well, we brought in Jane Tromp to come in and talk to you about what you need to do in order to get your manuscript ready for that next step before you move into the publishing book from the series, but also before you do either go out and query a publisher or maybe send your book out to be published, that you're going to self-publish. So she takes us through the main things that you need to be aware of before you do that. And this is really useful because I think often, particularly for our first books, we get very, very excited and we want to get the book out there as soon as possible and feel that feeling of having published your first book. But it is advisable to take a breath and just make sure you've got everything in place and the way you want it to be. At a top line level, Jane is saying you want to be knowledgeable, you want to be sparkly, which I love, and you want to be detail orientated. And given what I've just told you about me, that's where I do need some help. So I'm really glad that Jane has put this chapter together. So she obviously goes into a lot more detail about these, but she's talking about being knowledgeable about the market, you know, the publishing market, be knowledgeable about your reader and the kind of person that they are and what they enjoy, knowing what it is that you are pitching. So this gets a bit more businessy, and it needs to be, because you've been doing the creative stuff and what we get into novel writing for. But if we want to find readers who not only will pick up the book but read it and enjoy it, So we need to start being a little bit more businessy or entrepreneur in our thinking, and Jana provides us with that lovely bridge into it. So she talks also about being sparkly and how it's important to know your own style and be comfortable in your own style, and have your voice sort of come out through your writing. And then finally, the idea of being, detail orientated, making sure that you know the timeline for your book, that you are consistent with your characters and how they are in the book, and little things like, and we've all done this. You're one of your characters might start off with blue eyes, and then by the end, actually, it turns out they've got green eyes. I've certainly done that, and I've had to go back and check that in my revisions multiple times. And then overused words. She also talks about overused words, and she explains what those are and how you can eliminate those from your writing. So that's just a top line of what she's talking about. Obviously, she'll go into a lot more detail in the chapter. But I hope from this outline you can see that we have pulled together such amazing subjects. We have pulled together specific topics that we know are important to your writing, particularly when you're writing your first book, as many of you are, I know. But then also, if you're sort of coming back to it, you might have written something, but it was a while ago, and you're looking to just jumpstart things again. And there's no harm in going back to basics. As Tony Robbins says, mastery comes from repetition. So going back to basics, being reminded of those, because there will be bits that you've forgotten. And it'll be great for you to have a reminder of those to kind of reassure you that, hey, you know what, I do know what I'm talking about. And this book, Launchpad, The Countdown to Writing Your Book, is helping you realise that you do have the skills that you need to jumpstart that career of yours. So I'm sure you can tell from my voice that I'm super excited about this. I think this is a wonderful, wonderful resource for you to have in your toolbox that you can refer to time and time again. None of this information will date. It is there for you, ready to use with every book that you write. Because every time you come back to a resource like this, you glean new things from it. Because every novel you write, you get better at your craft of writing, and some things then become second nature, and you're looking for the new thing. What's the next thing that you can learn about novel writing? What's the next skill that you can up level, whether that be how to change up the point of view that you're using, whether it is to deepen the type of characters that you are writing about, or to get better at your scene structure, which you'll have gathered by now is one of my pet loves. So a super, super resource for you. If you want to go and have a look at the book and you want to find out more about it, please go to launchpadcountdown.com. There you'll find out about the series. You'll meet the contributors and learn more about each of the contributors. And of course, you'll be able to order your copy as well. It's available where all books are available. So if you want to go straight to Amazon or Barnes & Noble, you can do that too. But our website is a really nice place to go and have a look and get a feel for it. And of course, you can place your order there. All right. Wow. I'm so excited. So please do, if you haven't already, if you found this podcast episode by accident and you aren't yet, please do subscribe. And if you're a regular listener, please do go and leave a review, because it really does help new people find us. And then it allows me to help more people, which is what it's all about. But I will, until next time, I will see you later. Okay, take care. Bye.